Oh, no, I'm tracking. We're live.
Oh,
Yeah, we're live. It's Wednesday morning. That means WTF Oh, wait. It's Fox News this time, isn't it?
yeah. Yeah, we got to talk about Chris Wallace's epic butthurt.
Yeah. Because let me tell you something, Chris. You're on the wrong side of this. It's not hard. Kayleigh's right. Um, it's funny. That whole the press is the enemy of the people thing. It's not what Donald Trump said. That's that's a fabrication. Funny story though, happens to be a fact. So here's what we're talking about. For y'all that missed it, perhaps, um, you should definitely go check out the segments from the press briefing from last Friday. It was last Friday, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Um, Most especially, and I tell you what, I'm going to ask Cameron to take over for a second here, but most especially, there's a clip from uh, Fox 10 Phoenix that is like the correct segment of it. So I'll go ahead and save that link in the description below, so y'all can go watch that. I'm not gonna play. Well, no, I take it back. You know what? Let's watch the clip.
All 9 minutes?
Well, we can skip about. What do you say?
Or we could just hit the highlights.
Yeah, let's do that. Um, I will go ahead and put it in the description too, though.
From red and orange to green, and we saw the United States increasingly become green. It's encouraging to see that America's reopening alongside that, with data from Homebase noting that 2/3 of America's small businesses are opening. An Open Table study said Americans are now starting to dine out again. Another Homebase study, 67% of local food and drink businesses. The president, as you all for treating that he does not take, but rather donates.
On the president's announcement. First, just to clarify, he came out and said, I'm calling upon governors to allow churches and places of worship to open up right now. Dr. Birx just said in areas where they have high cases of COVID-19, maybe they should think about waiting a week. So which is it, and why the mixed messaging?
That's up to the governors. As it's said in our guidance, we note that while many types of gatherings are important for civic and economic well-being, religious worship has particularly profound significance to communities and individuals, including as a right protected by the First Amendment. The president wants to see these communities open. Dr. Birx was integral to making these guidelines, and they lay out a pretty clear path for faith communities to reopen.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So, first of all, I hate the nature of the question. Like, the very first thing that I would respond is, I reject the premise of your question that there's a mixed messaging, because there's not mixed messaging. The
Correct.
experts have laid out guidelines, and those guidelines suggest.
And one of those experts, by the by, is the Dr. Birx that this reporter has mentioned.
Yes, the Scarf Queen. Anyhow, but it's not mixed messaging, because those guidelines include things like, hey, if you're in a high risk area, you should more slowly reopen, or possibly even delay the reopening of these particular sections of your economy and your social gatherings and stuff like that. So it's absolutely not mixed messaging. It's consistent messaging, and that's what she's pointing out here.
Now, I'll say this. I'll say this for the press, to their credit, it is impressive that they're able to consistently tell lies in the interrogative format. To ask a question, to lie while asking a question, that's a pretty impressive manipulation of my blessed mother tongue, you sons of whores.
You know what's funny is I'm looking at this picture. I love how you managed to freeze it right on the moment where she's clearly thinking, "You're a bug on my windshield. You're a bug on my windshield. You're a bug on my windshield."
And she happens to be right. So I'm gonna scoot forward a little bit. Get this guy.
Support these churches that are defying governor's orders and opening up.
The president's been very clear. He wants
Back
churches to reopen.
What
Yes.
authority is the president referencing?
Does the White House now support these churches that are defying governor's orders and opening up?
The president's been very clear. He wants churches to reopen. He wants them to do it safely. He wants them to do it in accordance with our guidance. It's laid out very detailed. It's posted now, so you can all take a look through it. And he wants to see all of those churches open in a safe fashion.
Now,
I
not
love how
only
she
is
keeps
that a
holding up the
perfect,
letter.
not only is that a perfectly cogent and reasonable answer to the question, it is an answer to the question, which is the same question that she has already answered, and it is the same answer to that question. So that's two. Here we go.
The question that we're asking you and would like to have asked the president and Dr. Birx is it safe? And if it's not safe, is the president trying to encourage that, or does the president agree with Dr. Birx that people should wait?
Jeff, it is.
Again, he's trying to imply that there's a mixed message here, that the president is not on the same page as the experts. And again, it's amazing to me that you can tell a lie without making a statement.
Yeah, and I love in the previous segment where she basically says, "Hey guys, the guidelines are posted. You could go read them yourself." But she's basically saying, you don't actually have to ask me this question if you know how to fucking read. Oh, there was the F-bomb. Haha.
Oh dear.
Whoops.
I don't. We're on the wrong.
Oh, no sounders. Oh well.
I wasn't ready for it this time. I don't even know what this sounder is.
How
dare you?
There, that's better. Oh dear. Oh no. We may have just had a bad morning, Cameron.
How dare you?
I see Goldilocks.
Yeah,
How dare
I don't
you?
hear Goldilocks. Okay, well, I just ran Goldilocks like 3 times in a row. I hope y'all are getting the audio from this clip. Otherwise, this show might not make any sense at all. Go watch the clip, though. So, they ask the question repeatedly. They ask the question, does the president... They phrase it a few different ways, but basically the question that they're asking is Donald Trump telling Christians that they should raise up arms and go about murdering their governors so that they can go to church? That's what they want. They want her to say, this is a call to arms for all American Christians to raise up your weapons and go and murder your Democrat governors so that you can go to church. That's what they want her to say. Donald Trump has in no way suggested that he holds that position. And even if he had suggested that in private, it would be grossly irresponsible for his press secretary to say that he had said that on his behalf. What he has said is, here are guidelines, I want churches reopened. And he did make the statement that if governors do not reopen churches, that he will overrule them. And these reporters ask a few questions about that. Let me be very clear on this. The facts are these. Under the Constitution, the president does not have the authority to overrule governors on a decision of this sort. Sort of. Because the question is not whether the president has the authority to overrule the governors on this issue. The fact of the matter is, the governors do not have the authority to unilaterally and by fiat, without legislation or amendment, suspend your constitutional rights without basically declaring martial law. You can declare martial law, or you can keep your hands off my Constitution.
Yeah, yeah.
So Donald Trump is not saying that you should take up arms and defend the Constitution against these governors who are acting like little tin-pot tyrants. Donald Trump is not saying that. He doesn't need to, because every founding father that signed their name to the Declaration of Independence already said it.
Yeah, just real quick, I've argued before and I'll argue again that the most important section of the First Amendment is not freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of press, that sort of thing. The most important section in the First Amendment is actually the freedom of assembly. And there's a real simple reason for that.
There are two simple reasons for that, and I'm cutting you off on this because I want to mention the less important of the two simple reasons before you say correctly what is the more important of the two. The second of those two reasons is that the freedom to assemble makes it possible to petition the government for redress of grievances, which is the fifth right that is protected by the First Amendment. But the real reason that assembly is important is what?
The most important reason that assembly is important is if you are going to plot to overthrow your government, you got to have more than one dude in the room so you can lay out plans for how you're going to overthrow the government. Period. Dark as that sounds, it is that way on purpose, because if you are going to take action against the government, you need to be able to organize your community in order to take action against your government. Just ask Barack Obama.
And to be very clear, I am not, in this statement and under these circumstances and for the reasons of what's occurring at present, suggesting that now is the time to rise up and overthrow the government. However, it bears repeating and bears remembering that our founding fathers asserted that it is the duty of men to be ungovernable when the government governs too greatly. And the tree of liberty must on occasion be watered with the blood of tyrants and patriots.
Thomas Jefferson. Anyhow, since we're watching the clip, can we play the next section where she causes the butt hurt?
Let me get...
And I would like to ask you if the president has considered pardoning President Obama for illegally wiretapping on towers, illegally spying on U.S. citizens, and other potential crimes out there. Has he considered that?
Okay. That question right there seemed to assume that Obama is going to be implicated and possibly charged and indicted with crimes related to, well, you know, the crimes that Obama committed while he was the president of the United States. Yeah, brother, your video is getting choppy over there. Do I still have your audio?
I still hear you.
Ooh, yeah, it's time to upgrade that internet, baby. I know. But anyway, she's asking this question.
Do you hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So this reporter is asking if Trump will pardon President Obama for the crimes that he committed while he was in the White House. I love the way she asks the question. The press is already beginning to operate under the assumption that Obama committed the crimes he's accused of, and they're going to start trying to make excuses for that. And then I'm gonna hit play again real quick because we're gonna hear this.
So I have not spoken to the president about that, but who I did speak to about President Obama and unmasking Michael Flynn were the men and women in this room. I haven't spoken to him on that specific point. Have spoken to him about the matter generally.
Listen
and I laid out a series of questions that any good journalist would want to answer about why people were unmasked, and all sorts of questions. And I just wanted to follow up with you guys on that. Did anyone take it upon themselves to pose any questions about Michael Flynn and unmasking the President Obama spokesperson? Oh, not a single journalist has posed that question.
But
okay.
Michael Flynn's name wasn't
so
matched,
I would like.
Did you hear it? One of the reporters right there. Listen for this.
Single journalist has posed that question.
But
okay.
Michael Flynn's name wasn't
so
masked.
I would like
Kayleigh.
lay out.
Did you hear it? But Michael Flynn's name wasn't masked. This is something that's just starting to pop up. There was an article in the National Review the other day, and it's been panned as a BS opinion piece by a crazy right-wing... Shut up. It's starting to look like it may be the case that Michael Flynn's name was not unmasked by Obama operatives because it was never masked to begin with. This is new. This is something that I haven't vetted yet, and I would not even bring it up without more interrogation into the subject, except that in this White House press briefing, one of the adversarial anti-Trump performance artists with a press badge in that room just brought it up. Michael Flynn was never masked. The claim is that Michael Flynn didn't need to be unmasked because he was not masked to begin with, because he was being treated already as a Russian spy. And so he was being treated as if he did not have the rights and protections of the U.S. Constitution afforded to a U.S. assumed to a U.S. citizen. If this turns out to be the case, then failing some serious red-handed in the cookie jar evidence to show that Michael Flynn was actually a Russian spy, then I don't think it means that the level of corruption is deeper or more serious than we expected, but the level of the crime is dramatically much more severe than what is already alleged in Obamagate.
Yeah, this is something that you pointed out to me. I didn't quite catch it, but simply put, if somebody's unmasked, you were already, if somebody was never masked in the first place, it means you were a target of an investigation. That's the only reason people are not masked in the first place, which means the Obama spy network, as it were, spied on the Trump transition. And I go back to everybody making fun of Trump for saying they're wiretapping me. And so I'm going to start having my transition meetings at Mar-a-Lago. It's almost like he was right.
Yeah, and no bones, to be clear about this, if it is the case that Flynn was never masked because he was targeted by that investigation, that means that there was a FISA court warrant on Michael Flynn before Trump was elected.
Yeah, and was continued after he was elected during the entire transition. And go back to that whole thing where Susan Rice fires off a memo at the last minute documenting that Obama wanted everything done by the book. I mean, it's not a good look, people. It's not.
No, it's
not. And the implications there should be terrifying because we're talking about a general, a patriot, a man that I have no doubt has done many dirty things on behalf of the country that he loves. Because, well, sometimes you got to have bad men willing to do terrible things to secure your peace and liberty and all that. And so this guy's entire life has basically been about sacrifice in the name of this country. And, we decided at the last second to spy on him and then bury him, threaten his family, financially bankrupt him, give him corrupt lawyers that give him bad legal advice. I mean, if this can happen to a general that has more than proven his love for this country, it can happen to any of us.
Yeah.
But we're running along, and we got to get to We got to get to Mr. Chris Wallace.
Out a series of questions, and perhaps if I write them out in a slide format, maybe we're visual learners, and you guys will follow up with journalistic curiosity. So number one,
Shots fired.
Why did the Obama administration use opposition research funded by a political organization and filled with foreign dirt to surveil members of the Trump campaign? Number two, why was Lieutenant General Michael Flynn unmasked? Not by the intel community entirely, but by Obama's chief of staff, by the former Vice President Joe Biden, by Susan Rice, by the Treasury Secretary. I mean, this is extraordinary. And
okay, and she goes on like this for another couple of minutes. And then, oh, son of a bitch.
Oh, no, you didn't.
I meant to close that window, not the whole
Not all
internet.
of the windows. This is what happens when you do it live. How much snappier would our show be if we pre-recorded it and then you ran it through Adobe and edited out all the ums and buts?
Oh yeah, it'd be flipping brilliant. But good God, who's got the time for that? I tell you what, y'all get me up to get me up to about 4,000 subscribers and start sending some money, and we'll tighten that up a little bit. But until then, Daddy's got to go to work occasionally.
Yeah, me too. And by occasionally, in about 45 minutes.
Yeah, I know.
But anyhow, okay, so the reason why we set all this up and we're giving the WTF to Fox News instead of CNN, and it wouldn't have been hard to find things in CNN to criticize their reaction, but Chris Wallace actually had a panel section that included Donna Brazile, by the way. And this is the same Donna Brazile where it looks an awful lot like she fed Hillary debate questions in advance of the CNN debate. So, you know, there's that little bit of weirdness as far as not being able to trust the media. But I don't even think Wallace was putting on airs. I think he was truly annoyed by how hard she bit back, because there's a whole nother segment in this where, and they're going back and forth over the whole religious debate of can the people go back to churches and whatnot, where the first kind of sarcastic thing that she says is, you know, it's kind of shocking to me how many reporters in this room don't want people to go back to church. And of course they were all offended, and one reporter's like, I love going to church, I miss going to church. Well, hey, guess what? Because of Donald Trump, well, because of the First Amendment, but at least social perception wise, because of Donald Trump, you can go back to church as long as you follow these safety guidelines. And hey, if you're in a high risk area, the guidelines include the recommendation that you don't go back to church yet. You maybe wait another week or two, and Bob's your friggin' uncle.
Yeah.
And then you go to this section at the end, because I love that line about, maybe we're visual learners, so I've prepared some slides. Woo, that's a real nice way to call somebody stupid. I loved it. It cracked me up the first time I heard it.
And how appropriately this happens after the segment that we already talked about at the beginning of this, where no less than 4 of these reporters asked no less than twice each a question clearly intended to back Kayleigh into a corner of stating a position on behalf of the president which he has not stated. And that position is they wanted her to say that Donald Trump is suggesting that you need to resist governor's orders. But that's not what he said. He has not stated, you know, absolute support for people who are resisting governor's orders. Now, I suspect that he personally wants to support and does support personally people who are resisting governor's orders, because we have governors out there like Gretchen Fifth Reich Whitmer, who is a little tin pot tyrant. and she is
Who
doing
looks like a
things
female
that
Bond
are
villain.
explicitly forbidden her. She is assuming authorities that are explicitly forbidden by the Constitution.
Yeah. Yeah. So Wallace goes on to talk about, I covered the Reagan White House in the press corps, and man, Sam Donaldson and I wouldn't have sat for this. Buddy, if you're invoking Sam Donaldson, you are trending in the wrong direction. And so Wallace's overarching point is, I have never seen this before. I've never seen a press secretary so openly hostile to the press. Okay.
Well,
You know
I've
what?
never seen a press that was so openly engaged in performance art.
Yeah, and here's the thing. This happens with Republican presidents and has happened, at least in my life, that I am cognizant of, going all the way back to Ronald Reagan. I don't mind an adversarial press, but when
In
you
fact, I
try
prefer it.
Yeah, but when
But that's
when
not
your
what this
main
is.
that's right. When your main goal is to make somebody operate off their back foot, and you only do it to the Republicans, like, I mean, gosh, I'm sorry, I can't help but go back and think about the time Anderson Cooper interviewed then candidate Barack Obama about Jeremiah Wright's insane statements, about, goddamn America, it's in the Bible for killing innocent people, and, just all of that. So Anderson Cooper's interviewing Barack Obama. He's asking him questions, and Obama's basically giving the answers along the lines of, well, I knew that he would say the occasional controversial thing. I just never happened to hear these particular sets of statements. And man, I saw it on Anderson Cooper's face. I saw it. I saw it. I saw it. There was this conflict between his leftist ideology and the fact that he wants the Democrats to win. And then there's the fact that he's supposed to be the big swinging dick at CNN that's going to ask the tough questions, that gets guest spots on 60 Minutes. And the ideological side won. Because my follow-up question would be something along the lines of, wait a minute, you've attended this church for years and you just happen to miss the occasional Sunday where he says some of the most radical shit imaginable? That's awfully convenient, don't you
Especially
think?
since the evidence seems to suggest that he says something along those lines basically every Sunday.
So we roll all the way around back here to our fantastic McEnany, to our fantastic press secretary McEnany. Donald Trump has stated from the beginning he's not going to operate under the rubric that every other Republican president has operated under. One of the things that's been really frustrating to us on the right is we keep accepting the premise of the left that we have to have the argument on their terms. We have to have the debate on their terms. And gosh, we keep losing that debate. Do I want to live in a world where it's necessary for the press secretary to be a hot little blonde that fires off extremely acerbic statements at the press? No, I don't want to live in that world.
No,
but I didn't create that world.
This article puts it perfectly here. Nearly every question asked in the briefing room is usually in the loaded construction of, as you know, things are terrible and it's your fault. Care to comment? And Kayleigh's decided to hit back. And good God, you know what? I loved Sarah Sanders. She was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
But she did not have quite this fire. And don't get me wrong, to say that Sarah didn't have this much fire, that's nothing against Sarah. That's not to downplay her. This chick is killing it.
Well, yeah. I mean, part of Wallace's complaint was she's a press secretary. She was a spokesman for Trump. But now she's the press secretary. So it's inappropriate for her to continue to be a spokesman for Trump. Bullshit. The press secretary is supposed to be a spokesman for whomever the president is. Every single press secretary has got a really simple job. They go deal with the press on behalf of the president, and they try and make the president look as good as possible.
I might amend that and say every press secretary has a really simple job description. I don't know if I would say it's a simple job.
Fair enough. Simple job description. But the long and the short of it is, we didn't create this world. We didn't. We're only reacting to it. Donald Trump
But
didn't.
we tried to fight it.
Yeah, part of the reason why Donald Trump is the president is because we did the Bush, we did the McCain, we did the Romney, and we saw how all that worked out. And it didn't work out. Sure, we got 8 years of Bush, and one of the biggest failings of the Bush administration is not just the foreign policy and all that other stuff, but it's the fact that
he was a Democrat.
Well, not only that, but Rush Limbaugh apparently knows the Bush family personally, and he's described on his show more than once one of his biggest frustrations was actually talking to George Bush in private. And in private, George Bush talked more like a normal person and would say things like the damn Democrats and whatever. But then when it comes time for the media image, because he wants to show the appropriate amount of reverence for the office of the president, he's never going to engage in that fiery rhetoric in public. Never, ever, ever, even now that he's retired. And ditto for McCain, ditto for Romney, which is a large part of why they lost. They sounded like a Bush Republican. And we'd done that, and we watched everything get driven into the dirt as a result of it. Donald Trump was not just elected because he was the right man for the job at the right time. Donald Trump was elected president because he promised us he would do things like this. Fighting back looks ugly because fighting looks ugly. But dear Chris Wallace, you boxed us into this corner. You, with your arrogance, thinking that, well, I've been a member of the press for my entire life, and I just cannot understand why in the world this would happen, because you have to ask the damn question in the first place, Chris. That's why it happens. This is the only option left to guys like Chris and I.
And for somebody like Chris Wallace to suggest that he's clutching his pearls. I've been in the press for 30, 40 years. He's been doing this forever. 40 years. If he was doing press with Reagan, let's see, I'm almost 40, so yeah, 40 years. Here's my question to Chris Wallace. If you've been doing this for 40 years, how is it possible that you can look at what just happened in that press briefing room and not immediately understand, oh, this is not the profession that I have, this does not look like the profession that I was in 40 years ago. It has changed dramatically since then. Now, it's possible, please believe, it's possible that this profession has not changed dramatically since you started. Chris, it really is. It's possible that the American press has been an anti-American, pro-communist, active communist propaganda engine headed by the Democrat National Committee for more than the 40 years that you've spent in the press corps, and you goddamn well know it. That's possible, because Fox News only popped up about 20 years ago, and they only give us a mere patina of legitimate conservatism in the press. So that it has not changed, and your performance activist press personalities out there. They're out there LARPing as journalists, and they're lying. Every time they put on a badge that says journalist, these people are lying. So, Chris, I would put the question to you, Chris Wallace, is it the case that the profession hasn't changed so dramatically that you don't recognize it anymore? Because if that's the case, you are not just the problem. You always have been.
And look, let's just real quick run down the recent track record of the press on a whole host of issues. This is, for starters, the same press that reported Hillary had a 99% chance of victory. And ironically enough, it was actually Chris Wallace on election night that was the first one to say, hey, you know, it's starting to look like there's a possibility Trump could win this. So there's that. But then, look,
God,
and it's not just
remember the panic. It was so beautiful.
I will never ever, like, you see the faces falling, like, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. But there's that. This is the same press that fed us all the bullshit about Russiagate, about Ukrainegate, even about simple things like Stormy Daniels. And then when it comes to social issues, like, none of y'all had the balls to say that Jussie Smollett's story doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, really? Really? Upper crust bourgeois Chicago is MAGA country? Okay, sure, because that makes tons of sense. And even all this stuff with COVID-19. Where the hell were you guys back in January? Because we were aware
back
of
in
this
January
issue
they were covering the impeachment, and if they had anything at all to say about COVID-19, what they said was, and I think we've got most of the press on the record, in print or on video, saying something equivalent to, this is no worse than the flu. In fact, it's not even as bad as the flu. Don't panic, don't panic. Nobody's going to die. Carry on, carry on. Go to Chinatown. Go to Chinatown and eat some bats fried in gutter oil.
You know, and then irony of ironies, the CDC is now revising its figures, saying that this might actually be equivalent to a really bad flu. But that's another topic for another show. But the long and the short of it is, you guys have been a propaganda wing. You've been bullshitters, as Chris pointed out.
Remember when George Zimmerman wasn't white? Pepperidge
a,
Farms remembers.
He was a white Hispanic. You know, and even the editing of the 911 call, and I realize Fox News didn't do that. NBC was the one that actually committed that sin. Yeah. But the long and the short of it is, we're talking about the press
in general now.
But the long and the short of it is, all of the news corporations, which I still believe have the right to exist and they have the right to sell their product any way they see fit. But I've also got the right to say you guys are absolutely full of shit, and it's a ton of fun watching you all slowly die off because you won't adapt and realize that now that we have this thing called the internet, and I can actually look up the 911 calls for Ahmaud Arbery, and I can read the police reports for Ahmaud Arbery, and I can read the DA's recusal letters for Ahmaud Arbery, I can realize, you know, the McMichaels might have screwed up. The McMichaels might even be guilty of manslaughter. But what they're not guilty of is a lynching, and this information is right here, available for you guys. And all you'd have to do is broadcast it to the world. And people would start tuning back into your shows. They'd start reading your newspapers again. But no. In fact, it even goes back to something that McEnany said in this press conference. These guidelines are posted. You could go check them out. Maybe go check out the guidelines and report on them. Just a thought, just a suggestion. Or you can keep clutching your pearls because you're just pissed that the world decided to move on without you. Whew. Wow. This one really makes me angry, honestly. WTF, Chris Wallace. Good Lord, we've gone double our show time.
Yeah, we have. I was going to say something, but you were just rolling. Like, I didn't even want to interrupt you enough to switch it over to your camera. And thank God your feed cleared back up. We got some mud out of you in the middle there somewhere. But honestly, I've got more to say on this topic, but we're double our normal time, and I know you've got shit to do. I've got to go build a shitty dolly. Because we gonna make us a movie.
Yep.
And okay, so I'm gonna say this about that real quick. First, if you happen to be seeing the show for the first time, please like, share, and subscribe. Especially share. I mean, subscribe. But just like when I'm sitting you down to talk about a life insurance policy, I would rather see your phone book than your checkbook. But like, share, subscribe, and keep an eye out. In just over a week, I'll be launching an Indiegogo campaign to raise some funds. We've got most everything taken care of. I could use a little help feeding a crew full of ravenous men who are going to be shooting a conspiracy thriller in the woods this summer. So, and this is not going to be something like SpaghettiOs where it's intentionally goofy. We're shooting a legitimate thriller film this summer, and guys, it's going to be, you're going to love it. I'm not going to spoil it too much. But it
might be slightly topical, though.
It might be slightly topical, and I should have an initial poster and an initial short trailer ready to put out there with the Indiegogo campaign by the end of next week. That's the objective right now. So keep an eyeball out for that. That said, shit to do.
Yep.
We love you. We appreciate you. Y'all be safe out there, and we'll see you tomorrow morning. Probably. I've had some rough nights lately. Daddy's working overtime. But we'll see you tomorrow morning. Damn it.
Yes. By the way, I checked it.